Hello, everybody. I am here with Tam and Jerron, and we're going to be talking about closing merchant account sales. This is our last panel discussion here in our series of 4. So we have one other panelist that might be joining us here in a minute, but we're just going to jump into this conversation because I think it's a really interesting one, and I really want to kind of chop it up with these two today to see if we can help people out a little bit. So what I want to talk about first here, and Jerron, I'm going to go to you on this. I want to just talk a little bit about building up to the close because I think sales in general, there's maybe a little bit too much conversation about closing the sale, as if like if I can just come up with the right thing to say, I'm going to trick them into saying yes. So Jerron, talk a little bit about this. How are you building up the sale versus or building up the close versus the close itself? What are your philosophies on this?
Oh man, so I got a ton I could say, right? I admittedly am oftentimes not great at overcoming objections because I've built my pitch around addressing the concerns before I get objections, right? So I, I can't tell you how often I get to the point in the sale where it's time to move forward and the merchant is asking, okay, so what's the next steps? How do we get started? What do we do? And I'm not asking for the business, they're asking me for the business. So with
Right.
that, like, I think that there has to be a lot of focus on sort of the value proposition and addressing the potential concerns. But most importantly, I think at the end of the day, it comes down to competence, right? And we've talked about before of like the importance of vertical selling and things like that. And as many of you know, like I came from the home improvement sales industry, and so when I'm working with contractors, I'm talking about uh, reviewing their contracts and making sure that the verbiage is giving them authorization for future payments and storing the information on file so that they avoid chargeback. But then I'm also talking about how we step in to handle the chargebacks for them, and what we do to prevent the funding delays and the process of getting their money back. So I'm addressing the concerns that they already have because I know their industry and what the issues are that they face. So by the time we get to the point where you would normally go for the close,
Yeah.
they're already
They're
ready.
already there. Yeah. I like that. What's interesting? One of my favorite closing lines that you can only use if you're doing what you're describing. One of my favorite closing lines is I like to ask the prospect, what should we do next? And a lot of salespeople, I'll tell them that, and they're like, "Well, what do you mean? How could you say that to the prospect?" And it's like, well, if you can't say that to the prospect, you probably already made a mistake. Like, you're not ready for the close just yet because, like, you should be able to ask them, "What should we do next?" And usually when I say that, the prospect will usually say to me either there maybe is some step that I wasn't aware of, right? So they'll be like, well, I guess we need to get a demo of that point of sale you were talking about. I'm like, oh, so you are interested in that point of sale. Okay, great. Or they'll say, well, I guess you need to get some information from me. Or they'll say, well, I don't know. Do you bring the terminal out here or what? So I like asking that one. So Tam, let's go to you on this. How do you know it's time to close the sale? Talk a little about your strategy of kind of building up to the close and then kind of how you know it's like the time. Like now it's time to move forward. Like, how do you know that? You're muted right now, by the way.
My apologies.
You're fine.
No lip singing. So getting past the building rapport, of course, and into the nitty gritty. Let's just go with a POS, I guess, as an example.
Sure.
And I agree with Jerome, where it's important to have uh, the knowledge to build the value, because if you haven't done your due diligence to understand the moving parts of the POS, for example, and does it integrate with 7 Shift, does it integrate with whatever, Does it do this? Does it do that? How does it work with online ordering? If you haven't done your due diligence, it'll be hard to kind of bring in the value and show them how this is going to make their life easier. Because not everybody's just trying to save money. Actually, believe it or not, I think that's becoming less of a trend. I feel like people just want more, make my life easier, or I'll pay more. So I'm getting a lot of that lately. I don't know if it was the PPP loans that did it. I wasn't there. Something's happened where the shift is less. Where you're gonna save me a couple bucks, but how's this really gonna help me? So this is important because if you're closing on just the numbers, right? Just closing only on how much they can save, and you're making that the priority, you're already gonna lose, in my opinion, just to a more skilled salesperson. And you're probably going to turn off the merchant because everybody walks in and says, I'm going to save you, X amount of dollars. But if you walk in as a more knowledgeable sales agent for merchant services and understand the pain points, and you just, like, I just walked into, I had a new agent, I was just taking him around just to kind of show him around. So I always love to walk in with them cold and kind of show them how it's done. I was just doing that this morning. So we walked into this place and they're using whatever POS. I'm not going to use names, but I noticed that they have a lot of sit-down tables, but they don't have a device to take to the table. So I noticed that, and then I asked them a little bit about, do you guys use 7Shift or a shifting, or excuse me, an app that when it comes to scheduling, and if somebody's not going to make it, they can go in the system and switch shifts, all that stuff. And they say, yeah, we use that. I said, okay, does your current POS integrate with that? They're like, no. I'm like, okay. So I said, if there was a POS that could integrate with that system, would that make your life easier? These are qualifying pre-selling questions before you ask for the sale. So that's just one example of the many that we do, and I keep letting them say, yes, it'll make it easier. Yes, it'll make it easier. Right. Once you get 5 to 10 yeses, they're not going to say no when it comes to the close. So and most of the close is done before asking for the sale. Most of the close is done before asking for the sale. Yeah. And that's because if you know what you're doing, you don't have to beg them to sign. You've already showed them so much value. They're ready to go. And the transition to the sale is, I just say, you know what? Unless you have any more questions, I would like to just go to the next step and just get some information from you and go from there. And then I just start asking them information about that.
I love that. Yeah, I call it the paperwork close. I like that. I always did that too. That was one of my favorites. John, I'm going to go back to you on this, and Tam touched on this, but are there any kind of specific things that you do to get that agreement before the close to build up? I'm a big believer in what Tam just said. It's like, it's like you have to come up with the right lines, because you can't just, you can't say, you notice Tam didn't just say, well, if there was a point of sale system where that integrated, would you be willing to move forward? No. Would that make your life a little easier? Yeah. Right. Like they're going to say yes. So I'm curious, do you have any follow up on that, Jaron? Anything that maybe strategies you have to kind of build that agreement momentum throughout the process?
Yeah. So, I'll walk you through kind of my process. We do, the vast majority of our business comes through referrals, right? So, usually what I do is I'll do the initial qualifying call, reach out, touch base, and we'll schedule a time where I can present and do a demo of our software platform, right? So we use primarily NMI as an omni-channel gateway. We have a lot of home improvement contractors that use it as a standalone service. And then we have a number of estimating tools and CRMs in the contractor space that we can integrate directly with that. So depending on, once I ask those questions and figure out sort of their workflow, like I'll ask them, walk me through a typical transaction. How does that work? And then based off of that, when I am scheduling the demo, I usually want to do it, a couple days out, and I'll let them know, like, hey, I can get numbers together for you before we meet for the demo. I'll need typically 3 months of statements, but the more data you provide me, the more accurate the picture is going to be, especially given that you're a contractor and your business is seasonal. So I'll throw that out there. And then we'll schedule the time for the demo. Say it's 2 days after. 75% of the time, I get the statements, a day or two before, so that I can actually put numbers together. And I will send the proposal over to them with some numbers and sort of the outline of what we're looking to accomplish. But it's devoid of context, right? It's just enough information to keep them interested without enough that they can take that and run without the explanation and context, which comes when we do the demo, right? And so I will set it up. We're going to look at the software. We're going to do this. We're going to review the proposal that I'm going to send over based off of the information that you provided. If you decide to move forward, if this is a good fit for you, I will need A, B, C, and D. I just throw it out there. The typical stuff you're going to need to open a bank account and plant that seed then, right? And then we get to the actual demo. We walk through the software. We go through the proposal. And by that time, it's primed for them saying, okay, well, what do we need? Because I kind of laid out the expectations. I addressed the concerns. They know functionally how it would work and what it would look like. And, when they will often ask like timeline types of questions through the process. Like, so how long does it typically take? Like when they start asking those questions, like I know it's a done deal, right? So we just kind of hold their hand and walk them to the finish line.
I love it. Yeah. So I'm a huge believer in timeline. If they don't bring it up, you bring it up, but I always like to talk about that as well and kind of say, okay, let's talk about timeline and what we're looking at here. Generally speaking, it's going to take X. One of the other things that I think is so powerful that both of you alluded to that I want to be really specific for our listeners here is that you have to identify like minor things to you may be minor and get them to agree that it's going to be a benefit to them in one way or another. Tam talked about convenience. Jaron's talking about price and convenience and all of that. And so whatever the value proposition is, make sure that you have their agreement on some things that are going to be better. But again, the way you get that agreement is a little tricky. And there's a whole salesman thing where a lot of salespeople don't even realize they do it. But like, you got to ask it in a way where they're not making they don't feel like they're committing to the sale.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? One of my favorite lines I like to use is, does that sound a little better to you? I like that. You know what I mean? So I'll say something like, now I see you've already got this solution here. Now with our solution, it would do X, Y, and Z. Does that sound a little better to you? I'm not saying would you sign up or anything. I'm just saying, would that sound a little better to you? And they'll say, yeah, I mean, that sounds a little better. And it's like, okay, great. Now let me ask you another question. And I'm just like building. And then, I'll even say, is that something that you could implement? Is that something that if you decided to implement that for your business, would you see that having any kind of impact at all? I actually like to get them to sell me. Sometimes I like to make it sound, you know what I mean? Like, would this have, I don't know, would this have any impact on your business at all? And I know it would, right? It's like, you don't even have a time clock. I remember a lot of people, when I was selling POS, they'd have like literally no time clock in their business. You know what I mean? It was like a punch thing, and I would say, if your employees had a way where when they walked in, they had to use a unique code and they clocked in on the point of sale system, then it integrated with your payroll provider. So you would know that it was totally accurate. I mean, I don't know. Would that have any kind of an impact on your business? And people are like, oh my word, that would be huge. And it's like, let them tell you how awesome.
So I'm going to just throw this in there. I grew up, I was baptized in the gospel of Dave Sandler training. And so I'm a Sandler selling system guy. And, one of the things that I do heavily is sort of the reverse sale when they get too excited and have like the lofty, oh, this is going to be great. This will be a simple implementation. Like I bring them back to earth. Right. I'm like, I mean, we'll implement it, but anytime there's change, there can be bumps in the road, and
Right.
you know, so I don't want to promise you that it's going to be super smooth. Like, I just want to promise you that I'm going to hold your hand through the process. And that level of honesty and transparency is disarming, right? They're not used to, they're expecting salespeople that are going to promise them like everything is going to be great. And I'm like, I've had some that were great and I've had some that sucked, right? Like it's, you know, I want to set the proper expectation. And then I also do that from the number standpoint when I'm reviewing the statement, because the reality is when they're coming from tiered pricing or flat rate pricing or enhanced bill back and I'm putting them on Interchange Plus, oftentimes there's a ton of data and information that their current processor is not disclosing. So I always temper the expectation, you know, this is based on the information and what I know historically about this industry and where the effective rate should be and blah, blah, blah. This is what we're anticipating saving you, but I'm not going to know until we have a full month of data, and then we can actually look at the raw interchange cost, because, and then I'll show them this statement is 2 pages long, our statement is 7 pages long, and show them all the levels of transparency and what we disclose, so that they understand, hey, if they miss, it's not their fault because they didn't have this information going into it.
So I like that. I think that's great. Tam, let's talk about for a minute. Let me think about it. So you get through the presentation, you've got them, you know what I mean? Like, this is a good decision for them to make. And you kind of get to that point where normally they would be saying yes, and you're trying to close the deal. And then they're like, wow, Tam, thank you for showing us all of this. Definitely need to think this over a bit. Right. How do you deal with that?
Yeah, that's a maybe, and I'm kind of interested, but I have questions. Translation. So I love that. That means they're still in the game. They're still with me. So what I normally say is, it's not rocket. I mean, it's not very difficult. I just ask them. I totally understand. I give you a bunch of information. I'm sure you have some questions, but just for my curiosity, if it's okay, what are a few things you're thinking about? What are some things you want to think about? And I just shut up.
Yeah.
And
let them say it.
And let them give me the consent. It just happened to me, last week. I was walked into a restaurant, again, training an agent. So, I love taking people to the field and closing in front of them. It's the best.
Yeah, that's a good feeling.
I don't know why. I still love it, but I guess that's my problem. But when it comes to selling, right? But I walked in and it was a Mexican restaurant here in the Valley in California, and the guy's using like this old POS from the bank. I don't know. I think the hamster was still running in the wheel. Kind of tired, but so I talked to him and I said, "Look, great. You have a great, operation here. I love it. I love the layout. I gotta try the food one day, but just out of curiosity, what are some things about your POS?" He went through it with me at the end. He said, "You know what? Let me think about it and get back to you. Can you leave me the brochure?"
Yeah. Right.
Okay. So I said, "Look, I have no problem. You can have all the brochures you want, but at the end of the day, I'm sensing there's certain things I might have not answered fully. What are some things you want to think about? Do you want to take me to your POS and show you some functionalities, or what are some things that?"
Right.
And he did. He said, "Yeah, can you follow me to the POS?" And it's like boom, 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 boom. And then I answered his questions, and it's like, "Okay, let's do it."
Yeah.
And that was it. But if I was to say, "Okay, here's the brochure, I'll be in touch," and then put them in my follow-up list, I would have probably lost the sale because somebody else like me would have walked in and closed the next 10 minutes. So let me think about it. Means maybe I need more information.
Yeah. And I like that, because if you don't realize that, you can approach it wrong. In other words, there is some amount of information that the prospect needs before they make a decision. It's never a certain amount of time. Now, there may be another person that's involved. That's a whole different thing. But if it's literally you're talking to the decision maker, there's never an amount of time that they need. It's an amount of information. And no matter how many times you follow up and how many times you reach back out again, If you haven't given them the information that they needed to make the decision, they're not going to make the decision. So I love what you're saying, Tam, because the idea is, the question is, what do they need to think about? As you said, answer their questions, and then you close the sale, right? Give them the information. So one way I like to do it is a kind of a full transparency approach. And I tell them exactly what I just said. Like they'll say, I need to think about it. And I'll say, one of the things that I found as I've worked with, hundreds and hundreds of business owners is that usually there's like a certain amount of information that you need to make a good decision. And, we literally just met not too long ago. My guess is I dropped the ball and I haven't given you enough information yet in order to make a good decision. Now, whether you decide to go with me or whether you decide to go a different direction, I'm not going to have any hard feelings, but I do want to make sure that you know that I want your business. It's important to me. And I'm willing to invest the time with you right now to answer those questions. So in your mind right now, as you are thinking about it, I'm sure there's uncertainty because you're kind of like, well, what about this? What about that? Give me some of those things. What are you feeling right now about this deal? So I like that. I'll tell you one other really quick one. Then I'm gonna go back to John on a different topic here. But another one that I learned from a really, really good sales rep is that when people say, well, leave me the brochure, I'll let me think about it. He just looks at him and says, what do you think about it? That's it. I love that line. It's like the short version of the long thing I said a minute ago. What do you think about it?
Yeah.
And almost every time I've done that, it's hard to do. For some reason, it seems awkward to do it. So I haven't done it as much as I should. But like every time I've done that, they kind of like take a step back and they're like, we like it, but we're just not sure about whatever. And then you
That's
answer
another way of asking. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's funny because I found like 90% of the time when people say I need to think about it, it's a cop out. It's a stall, right? Tam, you're way more optimistic than I do because you think it's a maybe, like keep going type of thing. Like in my view, and I need to think about it is a no that you're too cowardly to say, right? And so I take that full transparency approach. And I'm like, listen, I'm a big boy. I've sold 600-700 merchant accounts over the last 8 years or so, which breaks down to 1.5 to 2 a week. For every account that I've sold, I had 2 other people that said no, right? If what I presented is not the best fit for you for whatever reason, it's okay to tell me no. Right? I'd much rather you tell me no than I spend the next month following up, wasting my time, wasting your time, annoying you. Like if it's not a good fit, it's not a good fit. And then I shut up, and the real objection will come out.
Yeah, it's another great way to do it. They call that take it off the table. I don't remember who came up with that terminology, but take it off the table. That's a
takeaway
fantastic one.
Yep.
Yeah, I have a deal that one of the deals I was working on last week, a big deal. I have an email in my draft folder. I haven't got the courage yet to send it. I'm still tweaking it, right? This is a big deal. But I'm about to send it and just say basically like, hey, thanks because we're kind of in this pending stage, and we've done everything we need to do. So I was just going to reach out and I'm going to be like, hey, I just really want to thank you for your time and your consideration of this deal. It doesn't seem like it's the right fit at this time for you guys. If I'm wrong about that, please let me know. Wish you a fantastic weekend. Look forward to working with you in the future. And I've done those many, many times. And I'll tell you what's funny about it is I could send that on a Sunday morning at 10 a.m. By 10:15, I'll get an email back from the president of the company a lot of times that will either say, yeah, you're right. It's not a good fit for us right now. But more often than not, like to your point, Jerron, they email back and say, no. Like, it's just been crazy. Like, we really want to work with you. Right. And then we can move into the close. So let's talk about that. So
Can I throw one other thing in there real quick? You just remind. So I have the best when I fall into that follow-up trap where it's like we've presented, well, for whatever reason it didn't close, and then I'm following up to get a decision and I can't nail them down. Like I'm leaving messages. I was listening to a B2B sales podcast years ago, and they had a guy in there. He was talking about the email that he sends that he gets a 90% response rate. And I started using it, and sure enough, it's basically in the subject line, of the email, you write, "Have you given up on this project?" ? And send it. The body of the email is completely empty. It's just got your signature in there, but it's the question, "Have you given up on this project?" in the subject line, and you send it. And I'll be daggone if 9 times out of 10, I don't get a response that's pretty quick.
Yeah.
Like, "Yeah, sorry, we moved on. I meant to tell you," or whatever. Or it's a, no, I'm sorry. I was really busy. I haven't. And it reanimates it, or it confirms what we already suspected, but you don't have to waste time on it anymore.
Yeah, there's a guy who has a course, can't remember his name all of a sudden, escaping me, but one of the tips I got from him in my emails that's helped me a lot is he said, in any communication, but especially in email, it's really, really easy to get somebody to say no, and it's really hard to get somebody to say yes. So he said, he calls it go for no. So when I'll send an email, I'll say, I'll put a subject line, something like that, catchy thing, right? And then in the body, all I'm going to say in the body is like one sentence. And I'm going to say, "Hey, Susan, would you be opposed with committing to move forward with this deal today?" And she will respond, "No, I would not be opposed to that." It's actually a lot easier to, if I said, "Do you want to move forward with this today?" She would say, "Let me think about it." But when I say, "Would you be against?" That's the other word I like using better.
It's
Would you be
easier to get them to
against?
say no than yes.
Yeah. Would you be against moving forward with this deal today? I've even done it in person a few times, and it's been very effective with people because we're talking about it. When I get to I got to close the sale, and then I'll say, "Let me ask you a question. We've talked about a lot of things. I think it's clear that there's some value that we can add. Would you be against moving forward with this program today?" And they were like, "No, I'm not against that." Great. So anyway, Tam, real quick, and then we're gonna rapid fire here. We got a few minutes left, and I want to do a little Q&A. Talk about the paperwork really quickly, Tam. Give us 30 seconds. Any tips on like actually getting, I mean, a lot of times these documents are not exactly the easiest thing. We got to get social, we got to get bank information. So how do you get them to complete it?
It's funny. There's different, I guess, approaches to this, right? Everybody has their own way. Assuming that face to face, right? You're not gonna obviously, assuming we're face to face. I train everybody the same, and I do the same thing on my team, where we always take control and we ask the questions and we write. Because number one, handwriting, I can read my handwriting. I can't. Second of all, you don't want to give them something to do. Nobody wants to sit there and fill out paperwork, from what I've understood. So what I've learned is I'm also in control, because I'm just asking for the information and getting it and putting it down. Starting from, what's your legal name? What's your this? Boom, 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 and just writing it down. So when it comes to the paperwork, I don't want them to do work on. And I was out with one of my agents the other day, and he hands him the app, and I almost like fell off my chair. I'm like, "You just gave him like this to fill out? What are you doing?" So I don't know. That's my thing, my take on that.
Yeah, it's interesting.
I do.
Oh, John.
Oh, I was gonna say I do 100% of our applications through eSign, even if I'm sitting there face to face. Right? It's secure. I don't have to worry about carrying a paper app with their sensitive information on it. And we're big fans of Iris, and so we use Iris. And I will ask them the questions, put the information into Iris, and then map it onto the document for the eSign, and I will send it to them while they're on the phone. Did you get it? Okay, you'll see there's 3 pages, you have to initial on it, and there's 2 spots to sign, and blah, blah, blah. When you get to the end, it'll say click to finish, and then they're like, "Okay, I'm done," and I send it back. I almost never send them an application where it's not 100% complete, where the only thing I need from them is the signature, because there's too many variables in that equation. And it gives you the opportunity, if there's any hesitation, you're going to address that while you have them. If you send them an app where they have to fill out stuff and they start having second thoughts, because again, I want to also address, like, I'm asking you for your social and your date of birth, right? And I want to address it with you as to why I need that information, without sending it to you blank and then having you punch it in on your own, thinking, why does it need this and that?
Right. Yeah. a couple quick thoughts on that I'll share, and then I want to go to Q&A. So if you have a question, just type it out in the question box, and I'll look at if there's any good questions in there. We'll answer those real quick. But a couple interesting thoughts I had about that. You know, number one is, Jaron, you brought this up. I think the number one mistake agents are making as they transition to more of a remote sales environment is that they're sending agreements to people when they're not like on a Zoom or on a call with them. We talked about how there's a certain amount of information people have to have in order to make a decision. Well, one of the big problems is if you give them all of the information they need and you're not there with them, they're not going to make the decision. They're going to, oh, well, I got everything I need now. Now I just need to think about it. No. So you want to tell people, you know what? I have the paperwork ready to go over with you. I'm a Tom Hopkins guy, so I would never say the word agreement. You can't say that. So I would say, I have the paperwork ready for you to review. Do you have 5 minutes for me right now? And so it's like, would jump on a Zoom. I just did this actually a few days ago with a self-storage client. And I was like, do you have a couple of minutes? Yeah, sure. Okay, I'm sending you a Zoom link. Once he jumped on the Zoom link, he says, I don't think I got the email. I said, oh, I didn't send it yet. I want to make sure we had a couple of minutes. Do you have a couple of minutes right now where we could share screens and I can show you this? He's like, yeah, I've got about 10 minutes. I said, great. I just sent the email. So I had it ready, but we're going to be talking when we send it. One other little side step here, and I like, Jaron, I like your approach. Might actually work better than mine as far as the social of like explaining. I'm guessing you're probably saying something like what, like it's required by the card brands. What do you actually say about that, like to justify it?
Yeah, no, I said, we are registered ISO, and Elavon has an acquiring bank, and the banking industry, they have to abide by the Know Your Customer initiative. And most people don't understand that merchant services is the number one source of money laundering for drug trafficking, sex trafficking, and terrorism. And at least 2 or 3 times a week, we have fraudsters coming to our website pretending to be someone else trying to open a merchant account. So whenever we submit an application, whoever is the signee of the document has to undergo a federal anti-money laundering validation. And I will need your date of birth, your social for that. They do the background check. It's a soft pull. It's not going to affect your credit or anything like that. But that's why we need that information.
I love that. So that probably is going to work a lot better than mine. But the one that I always would do, because, I was always cold call prospecting and stuff. And what I would do is I would ask them, like you were saying, Tam, I would ask them all the information, like write it all down, except for the bank information and the social. And so then what I would do is I would either slide the paper, later on it would be my tablet, and I would say, okay, great. I've got almost everything that I need. Just have a couple of things for you to fill out. And then I would literally slide it across to them or hand it to them and say, if you want to go ahead and fill that out right there, I need to check one thing real quick. And I would hand it to them. And then I would pull my phone out and I would actually turn a little bit to the side and I would pull up my calendar. And I would start looking at my calendar, and out of my peripherals, always the same thing. They look at it for a minute, and sometimes they ask, and then I would do an answer. But usually I would say at least 80% of the time, they look at it for a minute, and then they put it in, because like it's something for them to do, and I'm over here doing something else. They don't want to interrupt me. So they get it done. They're like, okay, I got that. I say, okay, great. And I go say, I go to the bank account and say, obviously you want to get paid. So tell us which account you want to get paid into. I hand them that, and then I go back to my phone. And that's what I used to do. Worked really well for me. But again, I think giving more information, I love that approach as well. So, all right, let me see if we have any questions here. I'm not sure. We had a couple earlier that I responded. Okay, good. So, one last question I'm going to ask you guys, and then we'll end this one here. I know we're getting close to time. So, once the paperwork is complete, let's go to Tam on this one first, and then Jaron, you can finish this out. Once the paperwork is complete, we got a sale, right? Big mistake a lot of new salespeople make is they kind of like run out the door, like, woo, I got it, right? I'm done, And it's like, no, you don't got nothing. Like, you didn't put a terminal in there yet. You just made them feel terrible. So Tam, what do you do after the fact to make them feel like they really are committed to this and that they feel good? They don't have buyer's remorse. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah. So essentially, the first thing I want to go over is building the time expectation of the next steps. And then if I'm, for example, doing a gateway, right, for a B2B, I know maximum in 3 business days, they're going to get the approval, more or less. So even if it's going to be past that time, I still like to book an appointment for activation. So I book an appointment to get the next commitment, so they can, which kind of, makes them stick more. So I say, look, Obviously, we're going to go through the approval process, get the merchant account approved. Once all that is completed, what we want to do is either set up a Zoom or Meet and kind of go over the gateway and see if you have any questions, show you the hosted payment side where you can send a link, the ACH side, all that stuff. What's a better time for you? I know we're Monday. I'm thinking either Friday this week or Monday next week. What works best for you? And then obviously the alternative choice. And then they say Friday morning or afternoon, 1 or 3. Get the appointment. And then I kind of reassure that they made a good decision. And I say, look, I'm actually very glad you made the decision to work with us. I genuinely believe, and I reassure the values. I genuinely believe, based on what you said about not having the link to send out and having them put in the card and doing all these other things, it's definitely going to make your business a little bit more efficient and save you a lot of time and hassle on trying to collect payments. We're definitely looking forward to working with you. We do appreciate you for obviously working with us, and I genuinely believe this is going to not only save you money, but it's going to save you a lot of time in your business for many years to come. I'm looking forward to us meeting on Zoom Friday at 1 o'clock to go over the gateway or help you install the POS or whatever. And I go from there. So that's it. Just
love it. Love addressing the timeline.
Next appointment, reassure values.
Love it. John, anything to add to that?
Yeah, no, I lay the expectations and the timeline. We because we use Iris, we have a lot of status triggers and automations happening. So once they sign the agreement and it comes back to me and I sign it, then it creates a status trigger on our end for my office manager to push the deal through to Elavon, right? And so usually I'll lay out, barring any validation issues is what I how I'll phrase it. Barring any validation issues, we should have an approval in 24 to 36 hours. Once that happens, my team will start working on the onboarding and build the gateway. So keep an eye out. You're going to see emails coming across from our domain, right? You're going to get your login credentials and everything like that. If you have any questions in the meantime, just let us know. We're always here. And then one of the things that I do very frequently is when we get the approval emails automated from Elavon and from PulsePoint, I'll forward it to the merchant with just boom in all caps with like explosion emojis, especially when it's exceptionally fast, right? Like most of the time we're approved in less than 24 hours, but if they fit like a certain niche criteria, Elavon's automated system does it and it'll get approved in 2 hours. Like when that happens, I always send it boom. And they're like, so we're good? Well, yeah, we're good. I was like, we're going to work on our end, like keep an eye out for the emails. We're ahead of schedule, but just setting the expectation so that they know what to expect. The other thing is if it's a terminal, I'll tell them, the approval part of the process is easy. The longest part is deployment, right? It is what it is, right? So I'll let you know when it's approved. Typically, once it's approved, it rolls into deployment. And so I would set the expectation, this time next week, you should have and we're ready to rock and roll. And most of the time it happens before then, but the shipping and deployment, it can be a crapshoot depending on what they have. But I always set that expectation, especially if it's something I don't have on hand that we can just do it ourselves.
Yeah, I mean, and I love this. I think, maybe one of the only things I would add with my approach is very, very personal. And what I mean by that is both in the closing aspect of it. So again, a little context where it's like, Tam, you got a lot of solution sales going on. Jaron, you got a lot of referral sales. For me, my experience was very, very much cold call selling terminals, or you know what I mean? That's what I'm referencing. So in that context, you don't walk away from everybody that has an objection. Like you got to overcome, like they're not going to just sign up. They don't trust you, like you got to build this, right? So when you're in that situation, don't be afraid to go personal with it early on in the process to build to the close of, well, hold on 1 second, because they'll say like, I don't know, we're happy with what we have, like that, and I'll say, well, hold on 1 second, hold on. There's something I haven't said yet that is really important, and it gets their attention, and I'll say, I know you probably have heard this before, but I want your business. I told you my name is James Shepard. You can ask anybody in the community. I've got a great reputation. I want your business more than anybody else. Definitely more than this company that hasn't showed up at your business in the last 6 months or a year. I want your business. Okay, this is my business, just like you. It's like, I know, like, let's say I'm talking to like a auto repair place, right? I'll say, just like you guys are, you got this auto repair place. I'm sure you got friends and relatives that go to competitor places to get their car worked on. Now you're still cordial with them, but like, be honest, does that bother you a little bit? And they're like, yeah, that bothers me a little bit. Right. When I walk into a place like your business and here you are, a local business, and you're supporting this humongous, like, international competitor of mine, and you're not supporting the small business community, like, it bothers me a little bit. I don't know what to tell you. Like, that just bothers me. And I want your business, and I'm willing to do whatever it takes. What is it going to take for you to give me a shot? So like, that kind of thing works really well. And then the other thing I'll do is on the back end, once I close the sale, then I'll use the personal again. And I'll say like, wow, I am just so excited that you've decided to work with me. I take each relationship personally with my clients. You know what I mean? Like, this is a family business for us. When I go home today, I'm telling my kids, hey, guess what? We're working with Bob's, whatever shop. Like, I bring the kids into it. Like, dude, I do the whole thing. Like, and then it's like, man, they are locked in. Like, they're like, man, this guy went home and told his wife and kids that I'm a client. Like, I'm a client, I can't back out now. It's all over, and it's like, it's personal for me. And so I don't know, just a little side thought, but
it's so wild. Like, I love how, and this is the beauty of sales in general, but specifically in our industry, how everybody's personality is different and everybody can have an approach that works for them. Right. It like for me, some people can call it arrogant, whatever. I'm extremely, extremely confident in my abilities. Yeah. And so I'll tell them, listen, here, it is what it is. I'm not going to chase you. If can you call me back in a couple of weeks? I was like, no, I can't. If you're interested in working with us, I have a new sales rep. I'll send him. He needs more at bats. I need to get him in front of more people. He'll take good care of you. Like, my schedule is and I'll pull out my schedule. Look at next week. I'm booking 3 weeks out. Like,
right. Like, do you want it or not? Let's go.
No. And it's like, honestly, like for me, and it took a while to build my business to the point where I don't need their business. Right.
Right.
And build my confidence in my abilities where I'm completely and totally fine walking away from it.
Yep.
And if that's not you, don't fake it. Right. Like, and I'll tell, look, I've got ADHD. I will forget this conversation an hour from now. I promise you, I'm not going to follow up. Right. So here it is. What do you want to do?
And I think it's, it's the self-awareness and the confidence, right, is like so crucial to your approach. And a lot of it too is so situational. You know what I mean? The people, like I said, what Tam is selling versus what Jaron is selling versus what, last week we have Adam and Jimmy and what I'm selling, and it's different. But I think what I love about it is whenever I talk to top salespeople, one thing that always is exciting to me is we can have these conversations and you're passionate about what you're doing. When I talk to people who are failing in sales, you can't even have this conversation. What is your closing line that's your favorite one? Well, I don't know. Right? How do you overcome objections? I don't know. Like, okay, if you're watching this and you want to get better at this, let me give you a tip. Learn how to sell. All right. Like, go get a sales book, go watch a video course. Like, I loved, like, when I would sell, I always on my drive out to my first prospect, I always was listening to a sales audio program.
James, I have to resonate with you on Tom Hopkins, man. I went to his seminars back in the day. Guy was
I never
amazing.
went to an actual seminar. I was a little beyond it. He wasn't doing them as much, but I was reading the books and like, good stuff. He has this little green paperback book called The Art of Selling. Still
Yes.
on Amazon. It's like $5.
Yeah.
Like seriously, best $5 you can spend. But it's like you got to get into sales. If you want to be successful at sales, you got to get into it. You got to be serious about it. And to Jerron's point, which I love, is like your style may be totally different, but the thing you want to pick up on is the passion that all three of us have. Like, I mean, I had an hour-long conversation today with John from my team because I'm making a proposal, and I'm like, John, I need to put options into this proposal, like, and I can't figure them out. What do we do? And it's like we're having these conversations because I care about it. I want to do it right. I want the customer to be, I want them to have a great experience. So I have really enjoyed Sales September. This has been a lot of fun. Maybe we'll do some panels again down the road here. Jerron and Tam, thank you so much for taking time out of your very busy schedules. And I really appreciate your time. For those of you that are listening, thank you for taking your time. We'll put all these up on YouTube in the near future so you can rewatch them if you want to get some additional tips. So thanks, guys. Everybody have a great day.